pairwise TCP connections all the way down the path. That means that if anybody drops a packet anywhere, then all the circuits through that connection need to wait until we find that packet or get another copy of it or something like that. So wouldn't it be nice if we could just do end-to-end UDP connections, and we let the TCP connection, we let the browser and the web server handle lost packets. So that means that we're just one end-to-end TCP connection, and we're moving IP packets back and forth through the network. That would also mean that we could handle UDP. We could do voice over IP as long as we could get latency for it. We could let people play Quake, though I hope that they wouldn't do that. Any sort of, UDP IP connections should be supportable at that point. On the other hand, there's a lot more research that we still have to do in terms of how do we actually make this thing scalable and perform well and stable, stuff like that. Okay, and there's also packaging issues that we've been working on. One of them is I heard from a fellow in Egypt who works on human rights there that there are a lot of bloggers in Egypt, but they all first of all, they use the French version of Vidalia and Firefox because there isn't an Arabic version, but we fixed that. But second of all, they all use Internet Explorer because that's what they've got, and they've never heard of Firefox. So wouldn't it be nice if we could give them a little bundle that's self-contained that has Vidalia, Tor, Polypo, Tor button, Firefox, and it all just starts by itself. It's a blob. You click Vidalia. Vidalia launches Tor. It launches Polypo. It launches Firefox once it's got a circuit ready. And then there's a special Firefox that's pre-configured to be safe. It's got Tor button on. It's got the right plugins. That'd be pretty spiffy. So that's one of the things we're working on. And Stephen Murdoch, who again will be speaking next in the other room, is working on one of those, and it looks pretty promising. So hopefully that's another way to give people Tor so that they can use it in a way that's more usable and less likely to screw up. There are other options. There are some virtual machine-based options. There's one called Janus VM. The idea is that you boot, inside your Windows, you boot a little Linux kernel, and that's got Tor, and it's got IP tables rules that intercept all outgoing TCP connections and shove them through Tor. So that means that you just click, click, and now your server is your computer is Torified. That'd be pretty nice. Another approach, there's a live CD out there called Incognito that people are working on, where you just pop in the CD and it boots. I think it's Gentoo based, and it's got X and a browser and all this stuff, and all of it is pre-configured to use Tor correctly, and IP tables are configured to make sure that it's either going through Tor or it gets dropped, so you can't do anything accidentally not anonymous. And then there are some folks, I think some folks around here that are working on wireless router images for the Linksys WRTG, where you can run a Tor client on your Linksys router, and then again the IP tables rules would redirect all the outgoing traffic into Tor so that you'd be anonymous by default, even though your computer is running Windows XP or whatever you happen to be running. And then there was a fellow at Yale who built his own Tor client as a Java plugin for Firefox. He hasn't built very much of it. I don't know how compatible it is, but that's certainly something to think about. On the other hand, building all of Tor as a little Java plugin, it's going to be tricky to get that one scaling well, and especially tricky to get that to be able to be a server. Okay, and then better load balancing. Lots of stuff going on there that we want to think about. So Mike Perry did some measurements a while ago where he realized that we were underusing the top fifth of the Tor servers by bandwidth. And in fact, we were missing out on a 7-fold improvement on performance if we only load balanced better and made more use of those fast servers. So we've switched that around, and we've added 4 times as much capacity to the Tor network by better load balancing, which is pretty cool. It means, of course, that we've added 4 times as many users to the Tor network to counter that, but at least that's a good start. There's also an NDSS paper coming up from Nikita Borisov and his student at Illinois on more accurate and less gameable ways of measuring bandwidth. Rather than having the server say, I'm pretty sure this is the amount of bandwidth I have, or maybe having the server say, well, actually I've got a small amount of bandwidth, but I'm going to claim that I've got 2 gigabits per second, and then everybody will use me a lot. His goal is to have all the other servers measure each other's server based on based on how much traffic they've been seeing, and that way they can all upload their opinions, and then the directory authority can take the consensus of them, and then we'll have a more accurate way to look at that. Okay, so there are only a few things that I've written down that we need help with. There's a page called Volunteer on the website that you should go look at, or find me outside in the hall afterwards, and I'd be happy to chat more about all sorts of things. So UPnP-based library for Vidalia. We've got a lot of translators who don't really like opening text files when they're translating strings from one to another. So some sort of web-based interface where there's a database in the back and they show up to a web page and it says, here's the string, here's the form to fill in the next one. Something like that would be really great to help us get more Farsi and other languages that our users are interested in. We've got a to-do list, volunteer page, more relays, more bridges, more funding. If you know any law enforcement in Berlin or Germany, I'm here until next week, and I'm also probably going to be coming back, so introduce me. We need more privacy advocates in Germany. I mean, there are a lot of people here at this Congress, and that's great, but you got to go out and meet other people and tell them how important it is that we live in a society where you have the ability to stay private. It'd be nice to have best practices documents for how to use Tor when you're blogging, how to use Tor when you want to use IRC or instant messaging or voice over IP, or whether it's ready to do that yet. Right now we've got pretty good instructions if you're doing browsing, but if you want to set up any other application, then we've got this horrible wiki page that's complex and you have to go down and find, oh yeah, I'm using Pigeon, here's what I change. It'd be great to have the top 5 applications that work well with Tor, stuff like that. So if you want to help us write that page or debug that page, that'd be great. We had 4 great Summer of Code students last summer working on Tor. One of them's sitting over there in a green Tor t-shirt. Hopefully Google will do its Summer of Code thing again this coming summer, and hopefully they will invite us back to have some more students. So keep an eye out on the Tor website, and hopefully in a few months we're going to have a little please submit your application for working for us for the summer. And I believe that's it. So I've got time for 10 minutes of questions. I believe there's a fellow running around with a microphone, so go to it.
As you so meticulously pointed out, that we do not want to get into traffic filtering when we are exit nodes, because you make yourself liable. But how do I explain I don't filter traffic when I don't allow IRC traffic through my exit node, which Vidalia allows at the moment? How do I explain prosecution?
From talking to lawyers, at least in the US, there's a difference between filtering traffic by port or by IP address than there is by looking at the lower level of the application level traffic and saying, not I'm filtering this based on the port, but I'm filtering this based on bytes that I saw in the stream. At least in the US, that's a big difference. In Germany, I suspect it's a big difference, but I'm not a German lawyer. That would certainly be something to put in the German legal FAQ. When we find a lawyer, you should remind us about that question. There's a microphone that's not on back there.
It's now it works. All right. Have you ever been expected to go to your local law enforcement and answer questions or stuff, being a terrorist or something?
Have I ever been what?
Expected to go to the police or something for being a terrorist or so?
As a Tor developer?
Yes.
No.
As you as a
They've left us alone. In fact, I've contacted my local FBI office and said, there's this tool on the internet that I'd like to teach you about. And I met with them at a bar nearby and taught them all about Tor. But they didn't have any idea that it existed up until that point. So if you proactively go and talk to these people when they don't think you're a criminal, then it works a lot better.
Okay, just a little comment. Can please everybody who is not currently asking a question just shut up until we have finished? Thank you.
Surely there are more. I didn't answer all of them. There's one over here.
About the statistics you showed at the beginning, I'd like to know how many of the nodes are middle nodes and how many are exit nodes. Can you tell that?
I haven't looked at the list lately, but I think about a third of those relays are exit relays, which is, from one perspective, that's exactly the right number. Because if there are 3 hops, then we need at least a third of them to be exit relays, because that way there's enough for all being in the third hop. But from an anonymity perspective, your goal is to have as much diversity as possible at the beginning, at the first hop of the network, and as much diversity as possible on the last hop of the network. So right now, if you're only exiting from a third of those servers, you're not getting as much anonymity as you could get if we had, for example, all of them be exits. So we have enough just barely for performance, but we could sure use some more for anonymity.
You said something about Germans and donations. What was that again?
So up until last night, we periodically would get mail from people saying, I'd love to give you 30 euros or something, but how do I get it to you in America? And unfortunately, our bank in America eats most of the wire transfers that come from outside. So we've been working with CCC, and they have set up a bank account in Germany so that they can accept tax-deductible donations for Tor, and then they will spend them on useful Tor things. On Tor's donate page very soon, we are going to have a particular bank account number and SWIFT number and IBAN and so on. So if you are one of those many people who are excited to donate to Tor, but you live in someplace other than the US, then we should support most of Europe tax-deductible real soon now. So thank you, CCC.
Okay, a friend and his cousin uses Windows XP with Tor, and he uses a Tor server, and he is pumping out about 100 kilobytes, so it's not much, but it's working fine. So in the course of debunking the myth that Tor isn't working well with Windows, it is possible, I would say. And,
so the details of the Windows issue. When Windows starts, when a version of Windows that does not have the word server in its name starts, it picks out what's called a non-page pool, and it specifies a certain fraction of its memory based on how much memory is in the computer, and that's the non-page pool. And every time you do a network system call, like read or write or poll or select or something like that, then you allocate a piece of that non-page pool, and that stays used until that system call is finished. So if you're doing a whole bunch of reads and a whole bunch of writes, then you start using a larger and larger piece of that non-page pool, and after a while it gets full, and then like the drivers, like the hard disk and the monitor and stuff, start failing because they get a non-page pool error and they never check their errors because they're Windows drivers, and then like your drive crashes and it all goes bad. So once the non-page pool fills, all hell breaks loose. When you've got a computer with lots of memory, the non-page pool starts bigger and it's less likely to fill. Also, the more bytes you push, the more likely you are to fill it. So small Windows servers with lots of memory, they do fine. Large, fast Windows servers with not much memory don't do very well. Did that help to explain? Little. Yeah, some people do it. Be sure to give it a try. It might work.
I figured out 2 things which I consider to be dangerous. The one is, if you have this in the Firefox, the switch proxy applet, and you loaded one page with Tor, which you know you only should load this with Tor, and then you want to load another page because your bandwidth is small. For example, you use a mobile phone, and then you switch on none. You want to load the next page, it reloads the page you already see with no proxy.
Yep.
And there's another thing. If you use Tor on a Linux or Unix system, you have to use Privoxy. And there's in the wiki is written that you have to write this forward line in the Privoxy config. but I haven't seen yet. I don't know if it changed in the last time. Something that you also should configure Privoxy to change the browser string. And actually, I did this once, and since that the